Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Coffee, Cocktails, and Community with my dear friend, Carol Pratt. She is with the Best Buddies International Organization. Carol, thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Tell everybody a little bit about who the Best Buddies are.
So Best Buddies is a nonprofit organization that was started in 1989 by Anthony Kennedy Shriver. He started it as a college part of a college course that he was taking. And what it is it is a one-to-one friendship program that specializes in creating organic relationships for people with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities. And that being said, Best Buddies is kind of like a life cycle. It follows you from elementary school, and we have all different kinds of programs: elementary, middle school, high school, college. And we also have adult programs for people who aren't affiliated with the university. And that is to say that everybody needs a relationship. Everybody needs a friendship.
Absolutely. I was surprised to hear that about the kind of postgraduate program as well as elementary, because my exposure to Best Buddies came about in, I think Norristown High School became affiliated or got a chapter in 2018. Mm-hmm. And so I only knew of it at the high school level. Yeah. And a young man named Michael Kinsey actually brought the program to Norristown High School, brought the chapter to Norristown High School. And we haven't looked back. We have an unbelievable group that participate year after year. Our transition coordinator, Lisa Connolly, she's the I guess you have to have a teacher.
She's
person.
The advisor.
She's the advisor. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. And that program, I speak from my own experience as to how it is related to our son. Mm-hmm. And that program has catapulted Jacob socially.
It really is an amazing program. I have been a part of it in one way or another since 2017 through a friend of mine that I supported, and we now just organic friendship, just how things go. And through the years, it just kind of become just a part of life, and I learned more and more about it. A couple years ago, my wife went to the leadership conference that takes place in Indiana for all of the chapter leaders and advisors and anybody who is in charge of a chapter program. Oh, okay. It's a way for them to network and engage with leaders in other schools, because one of the things that Best Buddies does is not just the friendship aspect of things, but it is the leadership development. Sure. Because it is that social skill brings into leadership. Like 100%. The two of them don't separate from one another. Sure. And so when I became a part of Best Buddies at this perspective, it was really kind of eye-opening, and to along the way meet with people like yourself and talk with schools. You really get to see things in a different perspective.
Yeah, you do.
And it's really beautiful.
It is. I remember one of the first events that Jacob participated in. Another high school was having a Best Buddies dance, and some of the regional schools were attending. And he went. And it was the first time that he had gone anywhere without me. Mm. If that makes sense. Yeah. Obviously he's went to school and field trips and things like that. But this was us getting them all dressed up and dropping them off at school, and the bus taking him to this dance, and him coming back and having said he had such a great time, because a couple months prior to that, they had a Best Buddies outing at our local bowling alley. Mm-hmm. And that was the first one he was really going to participate in, because the one before was ice skating, and I think there was a scheduling conflict and he couldn't go. And I remember it crystal clear. We pulled up to the bowling alley, and I said, okay, let's go in and we'll get you situated, and then I'll be back for you in a couple hours. And he was terrified. He would not get out of the car. He kept saying, I don't want to go. I don't need friends. I have you. I have dad. I don't need friends. I said, yes, you do. I said, everybody needs friends. So I had to text Mrs. Connolly, the transition coordinator, and there was a girl that he kind of fancied, and he still does. It's his Kimmy. And I said, is Kim here? And she said, yeah. And I said, you and her need to come out and help me get him out of this car. Mm-hmm. Well, once he saw that Kim was there, he loosened up a little bit, and he ended up having a fabulous time. And now the students that participate in our internship program are all within Best Buddies. And we actually have found that the program was so beneficial for us. When we started this business and we started the nonprofit side, the Jake's Baristas nonprofit side, we created a Barista Jake Inclusion Scholarship that we award to a graduating senior at Norristown High School who is typically the president of the Best Buddies chapter and or exhibits excellence and inclusion within the community, whether that be a student that is just practices excellence in inclusion in a church setting, in a work setting, in school. I have a very close relationship with the people that run the program at the high school, so I know the kids that are in there. And we've identified who's getting it this year, and we've also identified who's getting it next year, and there's two that are getting it next year. So, when we saw that the Friendship Walk was happening, and I think the last couple of years we had overlapping reasons why we couldn't do it, and this year I marked it off on the calendar and said, we have to be a part of it, and I knew that in my head, and then I saw you at the So Much to Give Cafe.
That was a beautiful experience. And I'm listening to your conversation about the scholarship and the things in that perspective. And I think it's so beautiful because that's one of the things that I love about Best Buddies. And, you're talking about the way things happen to like put us together. That's kind of the way that life is sometimes.
Yeah.
And you were talking about
special needs advocacy community and parents and families. It's much more connected than I think people think.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And I was a teacher in preschool for about 15 years.
Okay.
In the Chester County area, and one of the students I had when he was 2 is now in high school. And
what's that feel like?
It's quite interesting.
Well, I asked that because a couple of weeks ago, 2 of Jacob's teachers, his kindergarten teacher and I think she was his third grade teacher, they're best friends, they came in to see him, and it's mind-boggling. She was pulling up, his kindergarten teacher was pulling up pictures of Jacob when he was in kindergarten, and we're all like, oh, he was such a baby, and now he's a grown man with a deep voice and facial hair, and
it's phenomenal to actually experience that, and to experience it from the perspective of individuals with disability.
Absolutely.
It's even more. And part of my role as a program manager for Best Buddies is talking with schools opening chapters.
Sure.
And with the Best Buddies Friendship Walk, getting those students to engage, and obviously because it's a fundraising event, helping them get that T-shirt.
Sure.
Because you have some kids that are like, I need the T-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do some outreach, and I did some outreach, and I got a text message response back from this individual's grandmother. And they're like, oh my gosh. So it was like full circle, and she shared with me, just like you were sharing about Jake's experience with Best Buddies. And just to see that in the perspective, I talk to people about this job, and it's not a job.
Yeah.
It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's to know that you're having an impact.
Absolutely.
Like to be at schools and to watch. I was just at Lower Marion, and they had their unified track going on.
Yeah.
And the students were just genuinely, some, I don't know how they all get into it. Some might go into it from the perspective of, leadership development. I want to be a part of that.
Sure.
But then that falls away, and you get the genuine organic friendships
Yeah.
and the whole purpose of this program.
And that to me is one of the most beautiful things, because again, now Jacob went from saying in, 2017, 18, I think it was 18, I'm not positive, but saying to me, I don't need friends. I have you and Dad, to now when his team comes in for work on Wednesdays, or when the other baristas come in, when we go out somewhere, he's like, hey, that's my friend, or I know this one. And he's really found sort of that social component in himself. So even before this, the last couple of Aprils during Autism Acceptance Month, even before we started the coffee shop and before I started the nonprofit, we did something called Vinyl Closet Cares, which was just the record store side, and we raised money for the Norristown chapter of Best Buddies.
Okay.
And we were able to help them buy their Norristown Best Buddies t-shirts, and we were able to help them with a couple field trips. And so every April, the fundraisers that we have are for our scholarship and for the program. And, we're going to be able to help them with the cost of the bus to go to a Phillies game in a couple of weeks. And it's just little things, but it makes such a tremendous difference for these students. So how many chapters in this general area, when I say like the greater Philadelphia area, how many are there, or how many school districts, I guess?
I'm doing a count in my head.
I didn't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
that's
If you just have a
we
ballpark
have
number.
about 60 across Pennsylvania in general. There's about 124 chapters.
And is that elementary schools, middle
through
school,
college?
Okay.
Yep, elementary through college. I want to say that we have 65 chapters in this area. That number's probably wrong at the moment. My head is so full of walk stuff.
I get it. So tell me this. With regards to the walk, so it is a fundraiser. So where does that money go?
So the money that goes from the walk, so Pennsylvania is broken up into two sections, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia area.
Okay.
Pittsburgh area, which is the western side of the state,
Sure.
and Philadelphia area. And that money raised stays in the area.
Okay.
It helps provide chapters. It helps open chapters. It helps provide resources to keep them running, to expand into other schools. Overall, the money stays in the area to keep the chapters running, to keep the programs running,
So-
and the education that involves is involved in that.
Sure, because you can't just say, "Hey, I want to have a chapter." There's criteria.
It costs about $5,000 from the outside perspective to open a chapter.
Okay.
From all the work that goes into it, and from all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And that being said, the $5,000 is not money that's paid for by the school.
Right.
The only thing that we ask of our schools is, and as we're talking earlier about the leadership conference, the only thing that we ask of our schools is to send a leader, chapter president, vice president, send a leader to the leadership conference, and that's all they pay for. And so this year we have a bus leaving from King of Prussia at 4:00 in the morning, and our presidents and vice presidents of the local schools will be hopping on a bus to engage and interact with presidents, chapter presidents from all over the country and
so
all over the
important.
globe.
But that's so important, because I think that they can say, "What are you doing in your school to make a difference?" And they can kind of bounce ideas off of each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, those leadership conferences, you do that in the corporate world. Why not do it in this kind of setting? Maybe about a month ago, we were asked to cater a breakfast for area superintendents for their own leadership conference, where they talk about, this is what's working in our district, what are you doing? And, if you're not bouncing ideas off of other people, what's the point?
Exactly. And that's the thing about the leadership conference is these students have all of these amazing ideas.
Okay.
And they're encouraged and they're empowered to learn. There's classes that take place. There's speakers that come in. And they do engage with one another. We had one this past year, and it was thankfully, to COVID, it was a virtual hybrid situation, and we had students come into Philadelphia, and we talked with them, and that was a small perspective, a small level. I think there was about 30 some people in this area, and to listen to how they engaged with one another,
Sure.
And bounced ideas off of one another, and to see that that leadership, those leadership skills taking place and getting engaged. And we gave them the tools.
Sure.
It was like,
You kind of give them a
here's
blueprint, and then
topic.
you give them a blueprint, and then it's up to them to build the house, right?
Yeah, and they did. It was like, how do you do this? And they all around, they talked about how they recruit other members, how they get their ideas for their chapter events, and just in general, how would you handle this situation? So it's like when we have the leadership conferences, it is a place for them to develop those tools.
That's wonderful.
And network with other students.
It's funny. And then I'm a self-proclaimed parent liaison.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Connolly and I were joking a couple years ago about, because I was so involved, and she was like, you need like a title. And I was like, okay, parent liaison. Well, now I don't have a child in that school. He graduated. I am simply a job coach here, and those kids overlap. So what can someone like me offer the Best Buddies program? How can we still remain involved? Or someone like Jacob, who's not in a university,
Mm-hmm.
what type of, could we create a chapter for adults?
And that's where we come in with our Citizens program. So our Citizens program is people like you and me.
Okay.
We would be on one side of the buddy
Sure.
pair, and then Jake and others would be on the other side of the buddy
So
pair.
same kind of
So
idea.
it's the same one-to-one friendship matching
Okay.
that happens all throughout. And I actually enjoy it a little bit more because it's more personal.
Yeah.
It's more, we ask for our citizens to be matched. You hang out for a minimum of 4 hours a month.
Sure.
I mean, just think about that. That's either like 1 4 hour, like let's go to the movies and have lunch.
Right.
Or that's 2 times a month where you go grab coffee, you go for a walk,
Whatever
you do
it is.
whatever.
Yeah.
And then you connect with one another via telephone, via email, whatever, once a week at the minimum.
Yeah.
Like those are just, we like to say guidelines,
Sure.
But we ask that our citizen members be able to commit to a full year. Look at your calendar, see if this is something that you can commit to. By the time 6 months rolls around, as long as the matches are done well,
Right.
you're not even thinking about what that year looks like.
What's the criteria to match?
So that is, we like to match for likes and dislikes.
Okay.
It's important. You want to put 2 people together.
Kind of like a dating profile?
Well,
So I like long walks on the beach.
yes. Interestingly enough, it is kind of like that.
Yeah.
An application gets filled out, a membership gets started, and then we would have a interview process, where you basically do talk about likes, talk about dislikes, talk about support needs.
Sure.
Talk about time that's best, and how you communicate best.
Sure.
And then distance is also important.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that you're not driving a long distance to connect with your buddy, because that's not going to work
Right.
out.
That's
in the
not
long
going to
run.
be a sustainable relationship.
Right. So it is a match, as you said, it's a matchmaking thing.
Okay.
And so the only thing that, we've run into is, as you can imagine, the buddies on the one side of the page, the list can be a little bit longer than the buddies on the other side of the page.
Yeah.
So part of our role as a program manager in the Citizens program is to talk with people about the program, build up that, peer side of things.
Yeah.
So that, it's easier,
We'll talk more about this offline, but that's definitely something that I would like to do, because I'd love this to become a hub for an environment like that.
Well, and that's interesting that you should say that, because while as one of the things that you were hearing from me was, it's not like this. It's not a snap. So in our elementary program, it's like a group situation where you're
because they don't even know how to. Two typical kindergartners don't know how to engage with one another.
Exactly. So at the elementary level, it is. I jokingly say it's like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.
Right.
You know, you just get everybody together and you talk. Right. You know, and it's like an education.
But I think we talked about this very briefly, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but when we were setting up kind of this conversation, and when you asked us to come and do the coffee for the walk, I had said to you, I would love to see more of this programming at the elementary school level, because if you are teaching inclusion from that point on, it makes things so much smoother. And then it's not an anomaly. Then kids aren't joining, and I'm not saying the kids do this, but I'm sure some do. They may join Best Buddies because they think it's going to look good on their college transcripts. But,
Absolutely.
But where's their heart?
And that's, you know, we did talk about that, because one of the things, you know, when I first started in this role, I looked at it from the top going down.
Sure.
Because that was the thing that was talked about the most. That's the thing that you hear about the most.
Right.
High school best buddies.
High school best buddies.
College best buddies. And then it was like this elementary program just kind of whispered in there. And the more that I was being part of this program, the more I'm like, okay, I don't want to focus on the trickle down.
Right.
Because I want to do the blossoming, the seeds planted, the education. And I was actually talking with some of my chapter leaders, even college chapter leaders, if we educate down here, then we're building up.
That's right.
And by the time you get to middle school, the middle school students are like, oh, I know Best Buddies.
I've been in that since kindergarten. And
Exactly. So by the time the high school Best Buddies comes along, you know, because we do have some schools who have that challenge of students wanting to be involved just because it looks good on the resume.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I always say, it does look good on the resume, but if that's the only reason that you're here, you're missing out.
You're missing the point.
You know,
and you're doing yourself and the person that you're paired with a complete disservice.
And they may find the point later on. Yeah. But initially in that moment they do miss it. So
I agree.
In regards to the citizen aspect, the wonderful thing about citizens is we can talk with our college alumni too.
Okay.
And keep that spreading, because some students, the citizen program was just a couple years old, you know, and during all of that lovely time that we just, you know, experienced.
Yeah.
I had talked with some college students who were alumni, and they're like, oh, Best Buddies is still going on after school? It's like, doesn't stop, you know. But one of the things that we do while our citizens are waiting for that match time, because when I talk with them and I interview them, I share the importance of patience.
Sure.
And I know, you know, from my experience, it's not easy. That's okay. It's not easy to ask an individual with a disability to be patient.
Right.
That is a lot of times one of the most challenging aspects. So we have in-person events once a month.
Oh, that's great.
And we have virtual events once a month too, so that while they're waiting for that one-to-one match, there's opportunities to engage.
I love that.
So I would like to talk with you about that too at some point in time.
Yeah, I think we had talked briefly too about getting all of the local chapters together here and just having a social.
Yeah.
And letting, you know, one thing that we did, we have a relationship with some of the students at Pathway, and also a couple of the other transition programs, Upper Marion, and I think it was PV came down, and they came in here for a field trip. And it's just, you know, a lot of these kids get used to doing things in their bubble, right? With their own. We had a pizza party with the Pathway students and with our transition team. And one side of the room was Norristown kids, and the other side was Pathway. And I said, guys, the whole point of this is for us to commingle and for us to kind of, you know, get to know other people. But that's such a challenging thing to do at that age anyway.
Yes.
And then you factor in, you know, social anxiety, any type of intellectual disability, or that's something that I would like to see happen more often, because I think that's paramount in helping them kind of feel like they belong.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about the program, and it's something that we don't think about, how it engages both sides of it. I went to a chapter that recently opened this year. They were open during COVID, but they were really getting off. And the first meeting, you saw that one side and the other side, and it was like, okay, everybody.
Yeah.
We're here.
Let's
do this.
But it was kind of like a wedding, right? Like the bride's side and the groom's side. And you're like, well,
And that's where that social
let's all get together.
Works for everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Saturday is the walk.
Yes.
It is a rain or shine event.
Heavens hope.
Heavens hopes that the rain holds out until we're done. Registration begins at what time?
Registration begins at 9:30, and so that's where you would come in, and if you haven't registered yet, you would register. You can register there.
Okay, so people can still register for the team. So if you wanted to be part of Jake's...
Barista Jake.
What did we name our team?
Barista Jake.
Barista Jake's Buddies.
Yep.
If you still want to be part of our team, you can register that morning.
There's no cost to register.
There's no cost to register. $50 or more raised gets you a T-shirt.
Which is nice and really soft.
That's right.
I don't have it on because I've worn it a few times this week.
But I think the other really important thing is to know the impact that you're making, and the impact that you'd be making is everything that we talked about, but also... I know for Jake, a lot of times after we've had an event here, if it was for us or whatever it's for, he'll say later, a lot of people came out and showed support. And it resonates, it makes them feel this is an important program.
When I left the office today, we had about 810 people registered.
That's phenomenal.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And one of the things when I talk to our schools about coming out, and when I talk to people about coming out to the event, it's a free event to register. Most runs are like $29, $35. It's a free event to register, but it's the mission.
Yeah.
Register, come out and see the mission, donate your heart's content.
Yeah.
Because when you come and you get wrapped in that
it's a warmth.
Big,
it's like a
inclusive hug.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to be there serving coffee and tea and lemonade and everything we have. So registration is 9:30.
Registration is 9:30. We have a little ceremony, if you will, to announce the top fundraisers and top schools and things of that nature. Janelle Burrell is our MC for the day. Then the walk begins at about 11:10. It's about a mile loop around the business center. Come back and we're going to have lunch provided for us by Valley Forge Casino. While you're waiting between the 9:30 and the 11 o'clock hour, we also have breakfast goodies prepared and provided by Wegmans.
That's great.
So it'll be a great time. We have games for the family. We have 2 fire trucks coming out.
Nice.
We have some cheerleading teams. There's a guest, some people coming out that I won't share because I don't want to spoil the surprise.
You tell me after we're done.
Maybe.
Okay. So please join us. You've heard us talk about Best Buddies 1,000 times. Come join our team. Come by and just see the mission, and then look into how you can help make a difference, whether it be if you have a child that's in any of the local school districts. Find out if the school district is participating in the Best Buddies program. Encourage your child. If they're a typical student, encourage them to join. Hold on. If they're a typical student, encourage them to join and be a peer buddy. If they're a special education student, special needs student, encourage them to join for the fellowship. It will make a tremendous difference in your kid's life.
It's life-changing for them. It's life-changing for the other student in the relationship. And it's life-changing for the parents as well.
Oh, 100%. Like I said, we're all in. So Saturday morning, rain or shine, join us. And we still have some events going on throughout May that are fundraisers for our Best Buddy Inclusion Scholarship at the high school. So definitely keep supporting us as well. So, Carol, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right. Hopefully we'll see you Saturday. Thanks, guys.
See you Saturday.
Bye.